Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio, Story 43.
So let's start our journey by looking at two childhood friends, Lu Yun and Xi Pingzi.
Let's establish the baseline dynamic between these two men, because it's important. They grew up in the same small village.
Just normal kids?
Yeah, they sat in the same study room from the time they were children. They were fundamentally inseparable. But raw talent was definitely not distributed equally between them.
Not even close. Xia was the golden child. The text describes him as a total prodigy.
A literal genius.
Yeah, he was famous throughout the region for his intellect by the time he was 10 years old. I know. A 10-year-old local celebrity because of how well he could write and reason. Meanwhile, Le's talented, but he isn't a prodigy.
No, he's more of a hard worker.
Exactly. What makes Le special is his profound humility. He looks at his best friend, recognizes the sheer genius there, and actively submits to learning from him.
Which is pretty rare, honestly.
Very rare. Le constantly asks Xia for guidance, and she tirelessly reviews Le's writing. They build each other up. They both become highly respected scholars in their region.
But here is where the central tragedy of the narrative really begins.
Yeah, the inevitable wall they hit.
Right. Because despite their local fame, despite their obvious intellectual firepower and their mutual dedication, both men completely fail in the examination arena. Over and over again.
And we are talking about the imperial exams here. We really need to pause here to understand the gravity of that failure.
It's huge.
Because for a modern listener, failing an exam sounds like, what? You don't get into your top choice university, you bomb the LSATs.
You just take a gap year and try again.
Right, you have options, but we have to completely discard that modern framework.
Absolutely. The imperial examination system in traditional China was not just an educational milestone. It was the entire structural foundation of society.
The only game in town.
Exactly. It was the absolute monolithic gatekeeper to success, wealth, power, and social utility.
Yeah.
If you were born into a scholarly family, your life had a singular trajectory.
Meaning.
From the moment you could hold a brush as a toddler, every waking hour was dedicated to memorizing the Confucian classics.
I was reading some of the background material on this, and the tests themselves were nightmarish.
Oh, they were brutal.
They were locked in tiny freezing cells for days at a time, right?
Yes, the physical and mental toll was staggering. Scholars would spend 3 straight days and nights in a microscopic open-air cubicle.
Wow.
They brought their own food, their own chamber pots. They were entirely exposed to the elements. People literally died of exposure or stress during the testing period.
Just to take a test. That's insane.
It is. But the format of the test was even more brutal than the physical conditions. They had to write the infamous 8-legged essay.
Which is what exactly? I mean, it sounds like a spider.
It basically is a trap. It was an essay format, so mathematically rigid, it bordered on algorithmic constraint.
Okay, how so?
You had to argue a profound philosophical point based on a single obscure quote from a classical text. But you had to do it using exactly 8 sections, with strict rhyming schemes, antithetical pairings, and exact word counts.
That sounds more like a puzzle than an essay.
It really was. And originality was actually penalized if it deviated from the orthodox structure.
Wait, really? Being original was bad?
Yes, it was heavily frowned upon. And the pass rates. We are talking about fractions of a single percent at the highest levels.
Fractions of a percent. So to fail this exam, which almost everyone did, it means your entire existence, your family's investment, decades of grueling study, it all amounts to absolutely zero.
You were considered culturally useless. Very. You couldn't get a government post, which meant you couldn't secure wealth or protect your family. It brought immense shame.
And this wasn't just a hypothetical problem for the author, right?
No, this is vital context.
Okay.
The author of our text, Pu Songling, lived this exact nightmare.
He failed them too.
Repeatedly. He was a brilliant writer, yet he failed the higher-level provincial exams repeatedly for over 40 years.
40 years of failing. That's devastating.
He spent his entire life in frustrated obscurity, working as a lowly private tutor. So when he writes about brilliant men failing the exams, this isn't fiction. This is his lived, bitter reality.
And that bitterness bleeds right into the story, because the failure doesn't just result in a bruised ego, it results in tragedy.
It really does.
Xia, the brilliant prodigy who was famous at age 10, catches a plague and dies in his 20s.
Such a waste of talent.
And he dies in absolute crushing poverty. He leaves behind a widow and a newborn infant.
Terrible.
The destitution is so severe that Xi's family cannot even afford to buy him a coffin. They can't afford a basic burial.
And in the context of traditional Chinese culture, which is deeply rooted in filial piety and the veneration of ancestors, a lack of proper burial is horrific.
It's basically the worst thing that could happen.
It is the ultimate indignity. It means the spirit cannot find rest and the family is fundamentally shamed.
So Lev, the surviving best friend, steps up. He takes on the entire burden of the funeral.
Because he's a deeply moral person.
Right. But his intervention doesn't end at the gravesite. Len effectively adopts Xi's surviving family.
He takes on a massive responsibility.
The text is brutal in its description of Lez's sacrifice. He's already poor himself, but whenever he earns a tiny bit of grain, literally a scoop of rice, he physically divides it.
He literally cuts his own food supply in half.
Yeah, he gives half to his own family and half to Xi's widow and infant simply to stave off starvation.
We see a profound divergence here between social optics and economic reality.
What do you mean by social optics?
Well, the local elite, the successful scholar officials in the region, they witness Lez's sacrifice. They publicly praise his incredible virtue.
Oh, so he's getting famous for being a good guy.
Exactly. They write poems about his morality. Lu becomes famous for his selflessness.
I have to point out the dark irony here. Society is throwing him a parade for his virtue, but virtue has zero caloric value.
None at all.
The local elite are writing poems about how great he is, but nobody is offering him a job. Nobody is actually stepping in to feed the widow.
That is the exact hypocrisy Pu Songling is highlighting. The social elites love the idea of morality, but the institutional system itself offers no material support for it.
It's all talk.
Exactly. Lim's reputation skyrockets, but his livelihood collapses. He is sinking deeper into poverty, terrified that he's soon going to be unable to feed his own children, let alone his dead friend's family.
Which pushes Luke to a total breaking point. He sits down, looks at his brilliant dead friend, looks at his own starving family, and he executes the ultimate pivot.
A very dangerous pivot.
He realizes the entire game is rigged. The text quotes him basically saying, "If a genius like Xia lived in misery and died in obscurity, what hope do I have?
A fair question.
If I stay on this path, I'm going to die in a ditch like a stray dog. I have to find a way to actually live while I am alive."
It's a moment of profound clarity.
So Limenge makes a radical decision. He completely abandons his academic studies. He drops out of the examination system forever, and he decides to become a traveling merchant.
That decision represents a monumental paradigm shift.
To put this in a modern context, imagine someone who has spent 20 years in academia. They have a brilliant PhD in a highly specialized, prestigious field.
Like a tenured track professor.
Yeah, they've been gunning for that tenured professorship their entire adult life, but they wake up one day in their late 30s, look at their bank account, look at the poverty wages they're making as an adjunct, and realize the academic job market is a total dead end.
Right.
So they pack up their office, throw away all the prestige, and make a hard pivot into, like, enterprise tech sales just so they can finally afford a mortgage and feed their kids.
The emotional weight of your analogy is spot on. But to truly grasp the scandal of Lu's decision, we have to look at the traditional Confucian social hierarchy.
Okay, let's look at it. How bad was it?
Society was historically rigidly stratified into 4 classes. At the absolute top were the scholars, the ruling intellectual elite.
Where Len and Xia were trying to be.
Right. Below them were the peasant farmers, who were respected because they produced the food that sustained society.
Makes sense.
Below the farmers were the artisans, who crafted useful tools and goods. And at the absolute foundational bottom of society were the merchants.
Wait, the merchants were at the bottom, the people making all the money.
Yes, the Confucian worldview held merchants in deep contempt.
Why? That seems so backward to us today.
Because merchants didn't produce anything. A farmer grew rice. A blacksmith forged a plow. But a merchant simply bought the rice cheap in one town and sold it at a markup in another.
Ah, I see.
They were viewed as parasitic. They profited off the labor of others without contributing intrinsic value. They were considered inherently greedy, morally suspect, and spiritually compromised.
So Lévrier, a highly respected scholar, famous for his intense morality, is willingly hurling himself to the very bottom of the social ladder.
He is embracing social disgrace.
Yeah.
But he is doing it out of a supreme sense of moral duty.
Right.
He isn't doing it to buy luxury goods. He's doing it so 2 families don't starve to death.
It's a sacrifice.
Pu Songling is launching a devastating critique here. The so-called meritocracy of the exam system is completely bankrupt. It failed the undeniable genius Xia, and it is actively starving the highly moral Lei.
It just doesn't work.
The institutional system does not reward true merit. Lei exposes this flaw by simply refusing to play the game anymore.
And the incredible thing is, once Lo Lei steps outside the broken system, he actually thrives.
He does quite well.
Within 6 months of trading on the road, he achieves modest financial success. He actually secures a comfortable livelihood for both families. He wasn't failing because he lacked capability. He was failing because the environment he was forced to operate in was toxic.
A really powerful realization. But stepping outside the bounds of normal society makes you vulnerable to the truly abnormal.
Which brings us to the city of Jinling, known today as Nanjing.
This is where things get strange.
Very strange. Lendus has successfully escaped the toxic meritocracy. He has a little money in his pocket, he's traveling for business, staying at an inn,
Right.
and while he's resting, he spots a man pacing around the courtyard. And this isn't just a regular guy down on his luck.
No, the text paints an intimidating picture.
Yeah, the man is impossibly tall. He's heavily muscled with thick tendons visibly bulging under his skin. But his face is dark, almost ominous, and he looks profoundly, deeply sad.
He is a physical titan, but his energy is completely depleted. The contrast is striking.
Lus, who we've already established possesses a dangerously empathetic heart, cannot just sit there. He walks over to this intimidating giant and simply asks, "Are you hungry? Do you want some food?"
A very Luth thing to do.
Right. The stranger doesn't even speak. He just stares with these hollow eyes. So the flags down the innkeeper and buys the man a meal. And what follows is a scene of pure visceral shock.
The consumption of the food is almost violent.
The man doesn't use chopsticks. He doesn't sit down politely. He uses his bare hands and practically inhales the food instantly.
Just devours it.
Lus, realizing the sheer depth of this guy's starvation, orders double portions. The man devours that too.
Still hungry.
So Legis tells the innkeeper to open the floodgates. He orders mountains of steamed buns. He orders a massive whole-roasted pig's rib. He orders enough food to comfortably feed half a dozen grown men.
That is a lot of food.
And this stranger demolishes every single crumb in a matter of minutes.
It is an animalistic, supernatural hunger. He is quite literally an empty vessel. And it's only after he has consumed this ungodly amount of food that he finally speaks to Liffey.
And his words are incredibly cryptic.
Very.
He looks at Limmy and says, "For 3 years, I haven't been this full." 3 years.
Hard to imagine.
Lian is understandably confused. He looks at this giant, capable man and asks, "You are clearly strong. You could work any physical job. Why are you wandering around starving to death?"
And the stranger replies, "I am suffering heaven's punishment. I cannot speak of it."
A chilling phrase. Heaven's punishment. What does that even mean?
It sets up a lot of mystery.
It does. Lian tries to get more information. He asks the guy where he lives, where his home is, and the stranger responds with a stored-up riddle.
Naturally.
He says, "No house on land, no boat on water, morning in the village, evening in the city." I mean, what are you supposed to do with that?
You're supposed to recognize that you are dealing with a being in a state of absolute liminality.
Liminality. Let's unpack the mechanics of that. What does that actually mean in this context?
Well, liminality comes from the Latin word limen, meaning threshold. It's the state of being in between.
Like a transition.
Think of a doorway. You're no longer in the previous room, but you haven't yet entered the next. You are in a transitional, ambiguous space.
Oh, okay, I see.
This stranger does not belong to the solid earth. He doesn't belong to the flowing water. He is untethered from human geography, human time frames, and human society. He exists entirely in the margins of reality.
And how does Lee react to encountering a borderline supernatural being who speaks in riddles and eats like a black hole?
Predictably, probably.
Yep. Lee is packing up his merchant cart to leave the inn, and the giant stranger just silently follows him. He stands there looking at Lee with this pathetic, lingering expression.
Like a lost puppy.
A giant, terrifying lost puppy. And Lee, instead of calling the medieval police, looks at the guy and says, "Look, you are clearly wrapped up in some massive, dangerous trouble. I don't know what it is, but I cannot bear to forget the virtue of giving a meal to someone in need."
Classically.
So Ladash casually invites this massive, cryptic, starving entity to travel the country with him.
He basically absorbs the stranger into his own journey.
Okay, I'm going to push back incredibly hard on Li's logic here.
Absolutely. It's absurd.
Because from a modern perspective, Lush has zero boundaries. He is acting recklessly naive.
No survival instinct.
To use a modern business analogy, Los is like a first-time angel investor who just made a tiny bit of seed capital.
Okay, I like where this is going.
He immediately finds a guy on the street who refuses to show a business plan, won't tell him what the product is, claims the government is secretly punishing him, and doesn't even have a permanent mailing address.
A terrible investment.
And Lou just hands over the keys to the company. Why would LeJust take on this massive liability when he just barely secured his own family's survival?
Your modern business analogy perfectly illustrates the tension here. There's a huge conflict between transactional logic and cosmic morality.
Because logically, it makes no sense.
If you look at Lei's actions through the lens of a ledger, through return on investment, it is absolute lunacy. But Liz does not operate on ROI. You have to connect this end scene to the very beginning of the story.
When he fed the widow.
Exactly. When Le bankrupts himself to feed his dead friend's widow.
He didn't ask the widow for a business plan either.
Precisely. In traditional Chinese philosophical frameworks, which are heavily influenced by Taoism and Buddhism, there's a core concept called Jide, which translates to accumulating virtue or accumulating merit.
Accumulating virtue.
But the crucial mechanism of Jide is that the virtue is only pure if it is completely divorced from the expectation of reward.
Oh, so you can't do it just to get something back.
Right. If you give a starving man food because you hope he will later work for your merchant business, that is commerce. It is not virtue.
So Liz just being pure.
Liz's generosity is a fundamental manifestation of his identity. He simply cannot witness suffering and walk away.
He is pathologically empathetic.
Yes, he is. And the text reinforces this purity a few days later on the road. Lei, being a good host, keeps trying to buy more massive meals for the stranger.
Keeping the giant fed.
But the stranger waves him off, stating casually, "I only need to eat a few meals a year."
Wait, what?
Right. This confirms to the reader and to Lei that the stranger is not human. And it proves that Lei's initial, impulsive feast in Nanjing was a profound, singular event.
He was in the right place at the right time.
Exactly. Lei provided the exact massive influx of energy, this being required at the precise moment he needed it.
So we have this newly minted merchant and his giant, riddle-speaking companion traveling together. And the narrative suddenly shifts from this quiet character study into a full-blown blockbuster disaster movie.
The stakes get very high, very fast.
They are attempting to cross the Yangtze River. For context, the Yangtze is the longest river in Asia. It's notoriously volatile, incredibly wide, and historically, crossing it in a wooden merchant vessel was a massive, life-threatening gamble.
It was a serious logistical undertaking fraught with peril.
And the worst-case scenario happens. Halfway across the river, the sky turns black. A violent, shrieking wind whips up out of nowhere. The waves turn into battering rams.
A terrifying storm.
The merchant boat is tossed into the air and completely capsizes. Everyone on board, including Leth, the crew, and the stranger, is thrown into the churning, deadly current.
Chaos.
The boat sinks. Every single crate of merchandise, Le's entire new livelihood, plunges to the bottom of the Yangtze.
It is total annihilation. A terrifying return to absolute poverty for Letang.
But this catastrophe is the crucible that finally reveals the stranger's true nature.
Because he doesn't drown.
Right, because while the mortal sailors are drowning in the violent waves, the giant stranger suddenly stands up. And I don't mean he treads water.
He physically stands up on the foaming crests of the river.
He walks across the raging water as if it were a solid marble floor. He reaches down, grabs the drowning Le, hauls him over his shoulder, and casually walks across the stormy river to deposit Le on the deck of a larger passenger ship that managed to survive the squall.
The physical laws of the universe are suddenly suspended. The burden has become the savior.
But the rescue mission doesn't end with Le's life. The stranger tells Liz to stay put on the deck. Then, this water-walking titan turns around and dives headfirst into the raging storm.
Back into the danger.
He vanishes into the black, churning water. A few agonizing minutes later, he explodes out of the river, leaps over the railing of the ship, and dumps an armful of Le's sunken merchant crates onto the deck, and then he dives back in.
He basically initiates a systematic recovery operation at the bottom of a tempest.
He plunges into the deadly river over and over again. He pulls up crates of silk, bundles of tea, heavy chests. He doesn't stop until every single item Lo owned is stacked neatly on the deck of the rescue ship.
Incredible.
Le is standing there dripping wet, completely shell-shocked. He falls to his knees and thanks the man. He says, "Saving my life was a miracle. I never in a million years expected you to dive into a storm to save my business."
A very natural reaction.
They check the inventory, and by some impossible magic, absolutely nothing is ruined or missing.
Yeah. The dynamic between the two men has permanently inverted now.
Completely. So the storm passes, they're catching their breath, and Lei, who is clearly still riding the adrenaline of almost dying, tries to break the tension.
Humor is a good coping mechanism.
He makes a little joke. He looks at his perfectly recovered cargo, laughs, and says, "Well, that was quite a disaster. But hey, looking at my list, I only lost a single tiny gold hairpin in the entire shipwreck. I'll take that deal."
A completely natural human reaction. A throwaway comment to relieve the psychological pressure.
But the stranger does not laugh. He takes the comment completely literally. He frowns, insists that the recovery is incomplete, and immediately turns back to the railing.
He's going back in.
Will panics. He grabs the guy's arm and says, "No, stop. I was joking. It's just a tiny piece of metal. It doesn't matter. Do not go back in there."
But he doesn't listen.
The giant ignores him. He dives off the boat and disappears back into the massive murky depths of the Yangtze River. The crew of the ship is staring at the water, convinced the man has finally drowned.
Because an hour passes, right?
Yeah, nearly an hour later, the water breaks. The stranger emerges, climbs onto the deck, and holds out his massive hand. Sitting in his palm is the tiny, lost gold hairpin.
Unbelievable.
He looks at Lek, smiles, and says, "Fortunately, I didn't fail the mission."
Didn't fail the mission.
Yeah.
That specific wording unlocks the entire mythological framework of the story.
I really struggle with the logic of the scene. I have to call out how bizarrely specific this is. It feels like a glitch in the story.
It does seem strange to a modern reader.
Imagine you're trapped in a burning skyscraper. The building is collapsing. Suddenly, Superman flies through the window, scoops you up, and flies you safely to the sidewalk.
A classic superhero rescue.
Then, Superman flies back into the inferno to retrieve your work laptop. When he gets back, you casually mention, "Oh man, I think I dropped my left AirPod on the 40th floor."
And he goes back for the AirPod.
And Superman, without a word, flies back into a collapsing building, sifts through burning rubble and melted steel for an hour just to hand you your left AirPod. Why is a seemingly omnipotent, godlike being obsessed with exact, down-to-the-penny financial restitution?
I love that analogy because it perfectly highlights the friction between Western superhero tropes and Chinese cosmic mechanics.
How so?
When you envision Superman, you envision a being of pure, generalized benevolence who saves lives because life is sacred. But in the traditional Chinese worldview, the supernatural realm is not populated by ethereal angels playing harps.
What is it populated by?
It is populated by bureaucrats.
Bureaucrats, like government workers.
Exactly like government workers. The Chinese conception of heaven is a direct, terrifyingly accurate mirror of the earthly imperial government.
Oh, wow.
The celestial realm is divided into ministries. You have the Ministry of Fire, the Ministry of Epidemics, the Ministry of Thunder. The gods who run these departments are civil servants.
They have actual jobs.
They have quotas to meet. They have strict jurisdictional boundaries. They have paperwork. And most importantly, they have ledgers.
Okay, so how does that explain the hairpin?
Think about the massive feast Lucra provided at the inn. The stranger was starving because he had been cut off from his celestial salary, his heaven's punishment.
He was broke.
Yes. Le fed him when he was at his absolute lowest. In the cosmic ledger, Le transferred an immense, almost unquantifiable amount of value to the stranger.
A huge karmic debt.
Exactly. When the shipwreck happens, the stranger sees an opportunity to balance the books. He saves Le's life, but he also needs to restore Lek's exact financial state.
To zero out the ledger.
Yes. If he leaves a single gold hairpin at the bottom of the river, his accounting is off. He owes a debt. He had a literal mission to clear his spiritual ledger, and a bureaucrat cannot leave a ledger unbalanced.
So he's not just being nice, he's closing out a work ticket.
He is executing an audit of his own karmic debt.
That drastically changes how we view him. So after this insane river rescue, Lek is fully aware that he is traveling with a celestial entity.
He knows what's up.
The business trip ends, and Lek brings the giant stranger back to his hometown. They basically move in together. And true to his word, the giant roommate only eats once every 10 days or so.
But when he does, it's still a feast.
Oh, yeah. It's another catastrophic drain on the local food supply. But they settle into this weird domestic routine.
A mortal merchant and his celestial roommate. It's surprisingly domestic.
Until the weather turns. One afternoon, the sky goes bruised and purple. A massive, heavy storm system moves in, and they hear the deep, violent rumble of thunder shaking the house.
The storm arrives.
Lek, who never fully lost his scholarly curiosity, looks out the window. He looks up at the black clouds and says aloud, "I wonder what it actually looks like up there. What is thunder, mechanically speaking? I wish I could wander through the clouds and see the architecture of the sky. Then all my philosophical doubts would be resolved."
It is a profound request for empirical knowledge. He doesn't want faith. He wants to witness the mechanics of creation.
His roommate hears this, laughs a deep, booming laugh, and says, "Would you like to take a tour of the clouds?"
An exclusive invite.
Before Lick can even answer, an overwhelming wave of exhaustion hits him. His knees buckle. He barely makes it to his bed before he falls into an impossibly deep sleep.
The transition begins.
But when his eyes flutter open again, he is no longer in his bedroom. He feels his body swaying gently, like he's standing on the deck of a ship. He looks around and he is entirely enveloped in thick, swirling mist.
It's very atmospheric.
He takes a step, and the ground beneath his boots isn't wood or stone. It's soft, spongy, and giving. He is physically standing on top of the storm clouds.
The author's use of sensory detail here is brilliant. The transition from the mundane earthly realm to the celestial sphere is seamless, but deeply physical.
It's so incredibly tactile. The text notes that the clouds feel like thick cotton pressing against his body.
Not just mist, but physical substance.
He looks up, and the sky isn't a distant dome. The stars are right there, hovering at eye level, and they aren't just points of light gas. They are solid, physical objects.
Like ornaments.
The text compares them to lotus seeds embedded in a massive lotus pod. Some of these stars are massive, the size of giant clay water jars. Others are small, the size of tea bowls.
And he can touch them.
Lair actually reaches out his hand and touches them. The large stars are cold, hard, and firmly rooted in the sky. But when he pokes the smaller stars, they wobble. They feel loose in their sockets.
We're seeing a mechanistic clockwork universe. It is a physical machine.
A machine that Led decides to vandalize.
Of course he does.
He finds one small star that is wobbling so much, he just reaches up, twists it, plucks it right out of the sky like a ripe apple, and shoves it deep into his sleeve.
Just steals a piece of the cosmos.
Then he pushes the thick cotton clouds apart and looks down. Far below, he can see the curvature of the earth. The massive, sprawling cities look like tiny, scattered beans.
The perspective shift is dizzying.
He is struck by a wave of intense vertigo, realizing that if he steps off the soft cloud, he will fall for an eternity.
He is experiencing the terror of the sublime. He is a mortal trespassing in the control room of reality. And then he turns around and sees the source of the thunder.
This is where the story completely shatters any Western expectations of heaven.
It really does.
Le turns and sees two massive, terrifying dragons. But these dragons aren't flying freely through the sky, acting majestic.
They're working.
They are strapped into heavy wooden yokes. They are beasts of burden straining to pull a massive, lumbering cart with huge wooden wheels, and every time the dragons take a heavy step, they whip their massive, scaled tails.
Producing the sound.
When the tails crack against the air, it produces the deafening sonic boom of thunder.
The mythology of thunder is made brutally literal here.
But the cart itself is the craziest part. Inside this massive wagon is a gigantic water vessel, tens of feet across, filled to the absolute brim with swirling water.
A literal water tank.
And surrounding this massive tank are dozens of men. They're wearing practical clothes, holding large wooden buckets and ladles. They are literally dipping their buckets into the giant water tank, turning around and physically hurling the water over the edge of the clouds to make it rain on the earth below.
Then job safe.
And right there, sweating and hauling water with the rest of the crew, is Liz's giant roommate.
We have arrived at the Ministry of Thunder.
I am obsessed with this imagery because this is so decidedly unmagical. There are no choirs of angels. There's no glowing deity meditating on a golden throne.
No, it's a factory.
It is literally a municipal public works department. They have a water truck pulled by dragons and a bunch of blue-collar guys with buckets doing heavy manual labor. It is quite literally cosmic infrastructure.
Cosmic infrastructure is the perfect way to describe it. As we discussed with the hairpin incident, the celestial realm is a bureaucracy.
Right.
These men throwing water are civil servants carrying out an administrative work order to provide precipitation to a specific grid coordinate on Earth. They're just clocking in for their shift.
So this reveals who the stranger actually is.
Yes. The stranger is Lei Kao, which directly translates to the Thunder Official or the Thunder Clerk. He is a mid-level employee of the Thunder Ministry.
Which perfectly explains his cryptic backstory at the inn. He said he was suffering heaven's punishment. He had no house on land, no boat on water.
Because his permanent address is the sky.
Ah, that makes sense.
As a celestial bureaucrat, Lei Cao clearly made an administrative error. Perhaps he mismanaged a rainstorm, caused a localized flood, or filed his reports late.
They don't mess around with late paperwork.
No, the heavenly courts are notoriously strict. His punishment was demotion and exile. He was stripped of his celestial salary and cast down to wander the mortal realm, which is why he was starving.
That's why he was so hungry.
The massive meal Lei purchased for him at the inn likely coincided with the end of his probation period. He was fueling up his supernatural body before reporting back to duty in the clouds.
So Lei is essentially watching a suspended utility worker who finally got his union card back. Lei is standing there in the clouds, watching his buddy heave water over the side.
But he gets noticed.
But the other celestial workers spot Lei. They realize there's a mortal trespassing in a restricted access area, and they get agitated. They start yelling.
A security breach.
But Lei Cao, the Thunder official, drops his bucket, walks over to the crew, and vouches for Lei. He says, "Stand down, this man is my personal friend."
Lei Cao uses his newly restored authority to shield Lei.
He does more than shield him. Lei Cao actually walks over to the giant water tank, grabs one of the massive ladles, and hands the controls over to Lei.
Now this is interesting.
Now, the text makes a point to mention that right at this exact moment, down on Earth, there is a severe, devastating drought. Crops are turning to dust. People are desperate.
High stakes.
Lei Cao hands his mortal friend the controls to the weather. And what does Lei do? He takes the scoop, parts the clouds, locates his exact hometown down below, and starts aggressively, repeatedly dumping copious amounts of water exclusively over his own neighborhood.
He bypasses the entire celestial distribution schedule to hydrate his own property.
I have to stop the story here because this completely violates the rules of the universe we just established. I'm screaming foul play.
You're calling him out.
You just told me that heaven is a strict, terrifying bureaucracy, a place where gods dive into rivers to find single hairpins so their ledgers balance.
True.
A place where Lei Cao was exiled and starved for 3 years for making a minor mistake. How on earth does a celestial bureaucrat hand the controls of the weather to a random mortal, let him commit localized cosmic water theft during a famine, and seemingly face zero consequences from celestial HR?
It seems contradictory.
This is massive, blatant corruption.
It absolutely looks like corruption through a Western lens. You're applying the Western ideal of justice, which is symbolized by Lady Justice wearing a blindfold.
Right, justice is blind.
Western justice is supposed to be blind, impartial, and universally applied without prejudice. But the traditional Chinese moral framework operates on a vastly different principle. Have you heard of the term guanxi?
I've heard it used in modern business contexts, like having good networks or connections.
Yes, but it's far deeper than networking. Guanxi is the foundational system of social networks, influential relationships, and reciprocal obligations that governs Chinese society.
It's about who you know.
It's about deeply personal debts and favors. What this story is revealing is that guanxi is not just a human flaw, it extends all the way into the heavens.
Really, the gods play favorites.
The universe is a mechanistic bureaucracy, yes, but human relationships and profound personal debts can genuinely tilt the scales.
Because Le fed him.
Lei Cao is allowing Lu to hijack the weather because Le saved him from starvation. In this cosmology, repaying a personal life debt supersedes the blind, impartial rules of the bureaucracy. It's a feature of the system, not a bug.
So the gods can and do play favorites, as long as the mortal earned that favor through a profound act of virtue.
Precisely. And after Luke finishes wandering his lawn from space, Le Cao tells him, "My shift is over. I am fully restored to my post. We have to say goodbye."
Time to go home.
Le Cao then takes a massive, thick rope, tens of thousands of feet long, and tosses it over the edge of the cloud. Lei looks down at the dizzying drop and is terrified,
I would be too.
but Lei Cao assures him it's safe, so Lei grabs the rope and steps off the cloud.
The descent is wild. He slides down this infinite rope, the wind roaring past his ears, dropping through the atmosphere until his boots softly touch the dirt just outside his own village.
A smooth landing.
He looks up, and the massive rope violently retracts back into the sky, disappearing into the storm clouds.
A remarkable return to the mundane world. The imagery of the rope is a classic shamanic trope.
Shamanic.
It represents the axis mundi, the cosmic pillar or tree that connects heaven and earth. By traveling up in a dream state and descending physically via the rope, Lale is initiated.
He's crossed boundaries.
He's no longer just a merchant. He is a traveler between worlds who understands the hidden architecture of reality.
And he brought the proof back with him. Down on Earth, the results of Lei's celestial hijacking are immediate.
The water worked.
The text notes that in Lei's specific village, the trenches and ditches are overflowing with fresh, life-saving rain. The drought is completely broken. But just 10 miles away, in the neighboring districts, the ground received barely a finger's worth of moisture. The rain was hyper-localized.
He saved his village through his cosmic connections.
But the rain isn't the only thing he brought back. We cannot forget the vandalism.
Ah, the star.
Lei reaches into his sleeve and pulls out the star he plucked from the sky. He places it on his desk in his study.
What does it look like?
During the day, it looks like a dull, uninteresting piece of dark stone. But when the sun sets, this rock ignites.
It glows.
It illuminates the entire room with a brilliant, pure light that reflects off all 4 walls. It's brighter than 100 lanterns.
It's like a personal sun.
Lou cherishes it. It becomes his most prized possession. Whenever he hosts other merchants or scholars for drinking parties, he brings the star out to light the room, and everyone is astounded.
It is a literal piece of heaven sitting on a wooden desk. But a celestial object cannot remain static in the mortal realm.
No, it cannot. The story takes an incredibly intimate, almost surreal turn here.
It gets very strange.
One night, Liz's wife is sitting alone in the bedroom, brushing her hair. The glowing star is resting on the table next to her. Suddenly, the star begins to vibrate.
It wakes up.
It starts to rapidly shrink. It shrinks down until it is the size of a glowing firefly. It lifts off the table and starts buzzing around the room like an insect.
Just flying around.
It zips through the air, and before his wife can even react or swat it away, the glowing light flies directly into her open mouth.
Oh, wow.
She gasps, she chokes, she tries to cough it up, but it slips down her throat. She inadvertently swallows the star.
We are seeing the mechanics of a classic mythological conception narrative.
The what narrative?
The ingestion of a divine object leads to miraculous birth.
Oh, well, she is terrified and runs to tell Lo. He's just as bewildered. But that night, after they finally fall asleep, the universe sends an explanation.
Through a dream.
Lo has a vivid dream, and standing there in his dream is Xia Pingzi.
His deceased best friend. The brilliant prodigy who died in poverty at the very beginning of our narrative. The narrative circle is finally beginning to close.
Xia looks at Lo and reveals a massive hidden truth. He says, "When I was alive, I was not just a mortal scholar. I was actually the earthly incarnation of the Xiaowei star."
This is a vital astrological detail.
Xiaowei? What's that?
In traditional Chinese astronomy, the Xiaowei star is specifically associated with scholars, intellectuals, and recluses who possess great talent but are unrecognized by the government.
That is so fitting.
It is the perfect celestial identity for Xia, the failed prodigy.
Xia continues speaking in the dream, and he explains the tragedy of his human life. He tells Lei, "My early death, the plague, the crushing poverty, none of that was my fault. I didn't fail because I wasn't smart enough. I died young because of my father's lost virtue."
This is a crucial concept to grasp.
He explains that his father committed some severe moral failing, and the cosmic punishment for that sin was a shortened, miserable lifespan for the son.
We have to unpack this because it is a radically different concept of justice than we are used to.
Yeah, usually you pay for your own mistakes.
Exactly. You and I think of karma as an individual ledger. If I do something bad, I get punished. But in this cosmology, the family is a single, continuous spiritual unit across generations.
Like a joint bank account.
Karma is an inherited bank account. Xia's father overdrew the account through immoral actions, and Xia was forced to pay the debt with his life.
That's brutal.
It is, but it provides a deeply comforting, if slightly terrifying, theological explanation for earthly unfairness. Why do terrible things happen to brilliant, good people? Because they are carrying the invisible, inherited weight of a generational karmic debt. It completely removes the blame from Xia's individual capabilities.
So she was explaining the past, but he's really there to establish the future. He looks at Le and says, "When I died, my family was destitute. You stepped in.
The good karma.
Your immense kindness, the way you starved yourself to feed my widow and child, created an unbreakable bond of destiny between us. You never abandoned me.
A profound bond.
And then you literally traveled to the heavens, found my celestial form, and plucked me out of the sky to bring me back into your home."
The dull stone that glowed at night.
Yeah.
That was the essence of his best friend.
Exactly. Shia says, because of this profound bond and to repay your staggering virtue, I am going to return to the mortal world. I am going to reincarnate as your son.
So beautiful.
Lo wakes up from the dream, trembling. Now, Lo is over 30 years old and has never had children. But within weeks, his wife announces she's pregnant.
The swallowed star.
When the time comes for her to give birth, the bedroom is suddenly filled with that same brilliant, pure light that the star used to emit. They have a baby boy, and they name him Shinger, which literally translates to star child.
And we can safely assume that Shinger is not an average child.
He is a terrifyingly brilliant genius. The text fast forwards through his childhood and delivers the ultimate punchline to the entire story.
The payoff.
Shinger enters the imperial examination system, and he absolutely dominates it. The text tells us he passes the highest possible level of the exams, the Jinshi degree, when he is only 16 years old.
Let me contextualize that because it's hard to grasp.
Please do.
To pass the Jinshi exam at age 16 is practically mythological. Millions of men studied their entire lives and never passed the provincial level.
It's the ultimate test.
To become a Jinshi meant you were one of maybe 300 people in an empire of hundreds of millions to reach the apex of the intellectual and political world. It guaranteed immense power, wealth, and prestige for your entire extended family.
I used the term angel investor to describe Lu earlier, but this is the most staggering, incomprehensible long-term return on investment ever recorded.
It really is.
Le funded a funeral and shared half a scoop of grain when he was starving. He abandoned his own academic dreams, and the universe paid him back with a literal genius star child who effortlessly conquers the very system that Li and Shio were tortured by.
It is a stunning ROI, but we must remember the Taoist mechanics we discussed earlier.
Right, the virtue thing.
It's an ROI that was granted only because it was never calculated or expected.
Yeah.
In Taoist philosophy, there's a concept called Wu Wei, which is often translated as non-action or effortless action.
Non-action, like not doing anything.
It means aligning yourself with the natural flow of the universe without forcefully grasping or forcing an outcome. Lur desired academic success desperately at the beginning of the story. He forced it, he studied, and he failed.
He pushed too hard.
It was only when he completely surrendered that desire, when he dropped out of the system to selflessly feed others, that he engaged in true Wu Wei. He stopped grasping.
And the moment he stopped grasping for success, the universe handed it to him on a silver platter.
Yes. Look at the poetic symmetry here. Lur sacrificed his prestige. He accepted the social disgrace of becoming a merchant to keep his friend's family alive.
He gave it all up.
Because of that pure, uncalculated sacrifice, the universe arranged for his friend to reincarnate as his son. And that son achieves the exact academic glory that Lur had to give up.
It's perfect.
The earthly meritocracy was completely broken. It failed them. But the cosmic meritocracy, which operates on a much longer, stranger, multi-generational timeline, rewarded them flawlessly.
Which brings us to the very end of the text. The narrative of Les and the Star Child finishes there. But the author, Pu Songling, steps out from behind the curtain to deliver a final monologue.
He breaks the fourth wall.
He writes this section under a pseudonym, The Strange Historian.
Vishishi. Pu Songling frequently appends these philosophical codas to his stories.
What's the point of them?
It's his way of acting as a direct moral guide for the reader, ensuring his underlying critique isn't lost in the supernatural spectacle.
The Strange Historian starts by analyzing Les' decision to drop out of the exams. He compares Le abandoning his studies for commerce to legendary historical heroes who threw away their writing pens to join the military and save the empire.
I praise.
He praises Les' ability to look at a broken system, recognize that the path is fruitless, and have the sheer bold courage to change course. The author is basically screaming at the reader, when the institutional universe puts you in a dead end, having the guts to drop your pen and pivot is an act of heroism.
It is a profound validation of resilience. He's elevating adaptability over a stubborn, blind adherence to a failing system.
But then the author poses the final grand thesis of the entire text. He asks a philosophical question.
The big question.
He says, was this entire crazy saga just a thunder god repaying a meal? Was it just a star repaying a friend for a funeral?
He is asking if we should read this merely as a series of supernatural tit-for-tat transactions.
Right, and he immediately answers his own question. He says, no, This is not just transactional magic. He concludes, this is the creator's public reward for the virtuous and heroic.
The creator's public reward. That phrase reframes the entire cosmology.
It really does. It tells us that we shouldn't view the story as a buddy comedy with a god or just incredibly lucky timing.
It's deeper than that.
What Pro Songling is proposing is that the universe actually has a hidden operating system. Down here on Earth, the system looks chaotic. It looks unfair. It looks completely broken, where geniuses die in poverty and moral men starve. But underneath that chaotic surface layer, the deep code of the cosmic operating system is perfectly, flawlessly programmed to reward genuine character.
It just takes time.
It just might take a lifetime or a literal reincarnation to process the code and render the reward.